Fingers crossed this is working. All right, I think we are live. Hey there, how is it going? Lee Hayward here with another live video Q&A for the Total Fitness Bodybuilding YouTube channel. If this is coming through loud and clear, and if you can hear me and see me and all that good stuff, please let me know and type it into the chat window there. I want to make sure that everything is working fine on your end as well as my end. Hopefully that's coming through. Good stuff. So a little update now. Last week, there was no live video Q&A because it was actually my wife's birthday last week, and we were out of town on a little staycation, right? It wasn't that far from home, but we went on a little out-of-town getaway to celebrate my wife's birthday last weekend, so that's why there was no live video Q&A. And for those of you who missed last Friday and you're wondering, hey, where was Lee? Lee was celebrating his wife's birthday. So it was a combination wife's birthday / Valentine's all in one, right? Had a romantic weekend getaway. There you go. So who do we have joining in? We've got YT, we've got Dan, we've got Venom, we've got Abram, we've got, who else is joining in? Abram's good stuff. Awesome. As you're tuning in, type into the chat window and let me know if you can hear me and see me and this is coming through loud and clear. And also let me know, where are you tuning in from? You know, are you a regular to the video chat? Are you brand new to the video chat? Let me know in the comments there in the chat window. We'll have a interaction. And the way these chats work is I'm going to be hanging out here for the next hour or so, thereabouts, and answering questions and topics of discussion related to fitness, nutrition, building muscle, losing fat, any specific challenges that you have when it comes to your eating, your exercise, whatever it is that you're trying to do. Let me know there in the video chat, you know, your questions, your topics of discussion, whatever, and I'll try my best to help you out over the course of our chat today. And if I can help you, then I will. And if I can't, then I'll just let you know and try and find some resources or recommend some outside resources that can help you. All right, so who do we have joining in? We've got, let's see, Venom tuning in from Houston, Texas. All right, he must be a Spider-Man fan, I would assume. Spider-Man, Venom. My son is right into that. He's a big fan of Spider-Man and Venom and watching all that stuff. Drawing the pictures and cartoons. We've got YT from New York. Awesome. Abram from Amarillo, Texas. Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome. Glad to have you tuning into our chat here today. Now, I've got a few things that I want to discuss that were questions that came through from some of my personal coaching students, and I'm going to address them here. While I'm waiting for people to just share your questions and topics of discussion there in the chat window. One quick question that came through was from one of my students, Roger, who's part of the Muscle After 40 Blueprint coaching program. And he was wondering the differences between, you know, the whole debate over heavy weights and low reps versus lighter weights and higher reps. And like, what's the best scenario? What's the best set and rep pattern that you should use? And there really is no best set and rep pattern. And the debate, like, you know, should you lift heavy? Should you lift light? Should you do high reps? Should you do low reps? That's almost like asking the question, you know, how fast should you drive a car? It depends. It depends where you're driving the car, right? If you're on a busy street in traffic, you're going to be driving slow. If you're on an open highway, you can drive faster. If you're on a Formula One racetrack, you can drive way faster. Like it depends on the situation and where you're to and all that kind of stuff. It depends on the weather conditions, right? There's so many variables that come into play to answer the question of how fast to drive a car. And that applies to how much weight should you lift or how many repetitions should you do. It depends. It depends on the exercise. It depends on what it is you're training for. It depends on you and your individual fitness level, right? There's so many different variables that come into play. So there is no one size fits all cut and dried answer. But there are some general guidelines that I like to utilize for the most part. Now, again, it's not an exclusive list, and there's always going to be exceptions to the rules. But the general guidelines that I like to follow for people who are experienced with weight training, meaning you're beyond the initial beginner phase of walking into the gym like a deer in the headlights and not knowing what to do. Like you actually know how to lift weights and work out. Like you're beyond that. You're into the intermediate phase, right? You're beyond the beginner phase. You're into the intermediate or into the advanced phase. If you fall into that category, these are the general guidelines that I would recommend for most workouts. The big heavy compound lifts, your big barbell lifts, your squats and your bench presses and your rows and your overhead presses and things like that, you know, the big heavy barbell lifts, the power lifts. Those are exercises that are better suited to heavier weights and lower repetitions. So programs such as a 5x5 program would be ideal for big, heavy barbell lifts. Now, you can certainly lift those exercises with higher repetitions if you want, but they're better suited towards lower repetition, heavier weight, and working more in that power range. Then you have your compound exercises, but they're not the heavy compound exercises. They're what I refer to as the mid-range compound exercises. This would refer to like a barbell row or a lat pull down or a dumbbell press, dumbbell bench press, dumbbell shoulder press, something along those lines, a leg press. They're still technically compound exercises, but they're not the big, heavy power moves. They're not the exercises that you would typically test your 1 rep max in, if you will. Those exercises I find work better in a moderate rep range, probably in the 6 to 10 or 6 to 12 repetition range. Somewhere in that range is ideal for the mid-range compound exercises. And then we have isolation exercises, your barbell curls, your tricep pushdowns, your leg extensions, your leg curls, your side lateral raises, all these type of isolation single joint exercises. These are movements where you're not going to lift super heavy weight. You probably hear my son out there squealing. I think he might have fell down or something. I don't know. Mommy's taking care of him anyway. I think he did tumble down. He's running back and forth the hallway, and I think he did have a little tumble. But Mommy's there to save the day. Anyway, what was I talking about? Isolation exercises. Those moves, they work better with lighter weight and higher repetitions. So 10 reps and above. So it could be 10 to 15 or even higher repetitions for your isolation moves. And this is a general guideline that I recommend for most of my coaching students. Now, again, there's probably going to be exceptions to the rules where we do some cases we're going to lift heavier weights and for isolation moves. And then there's probably going to be situations where you're going to do higher repetitions for the compound moves. But it's a good general ballpark and a good general guideline to focus on. So that was a question dedicated towards Roger, who he emailed me this literally just like a couple hours ago, was asking about the whole question about heavy weights and low reps and light weights and higher reps. What's the best? And just to clarify it, you can make progress in all the different rep ranges. What matters the most is that you're actually training in a progressive overload, that you're actually forcing the muscles to do more than they did before. Whether that's more volume, more weight, more time under tension, more something. Like as long as they're doing more work than they were before, then you're providing the stimulus for them to grow bigger and stronger and actually grow and get a positive response. So that's the key. It's progressive overload, regardless of what rep range you're working in. All right. What else we got there? I'm going to just jump into some of your questions now because I see a lot of people are typing into the chat window. So I want to respect you and your time. And for those of you who are tuning in live. So Ange has got a question. It says, Lee, eating in a calorie surplus of 300 to lean bulk, but still feeling hungry 24/7, and people are telling me I'm too thin. Should I eat more? Eat until you're comfortably full. And I'm going to just, when it comes to calorie surplus, like, how do you know you're in a calorie surplus? If you're still hungry, you're probably not in a surplus. Your appetite is a much better regulator of your calorie needs than some height and weight calorie chart that you downloaded from the internet, where you plug in, hey, this is my height, and this is my weight, and this is my age, and it farts out a number. It says you need to eat 2,123 calories per day. it's just a ballpark estimate. It could be way off. It could be higher or lower or whatever. Like, it's just an estimate. All these calorie calculator formulas out there are nothing more than a ballpark guesstimate. It's a starting point. It's something that you can use to just like hope for the best and start with that. But don't take it as gospel. Don't take it as the be all end all and say, okay, well, the online calorie calculator said I need this, so I'm going to consume that. If you're still hungry, you're not in a surplus, because if you were technically in a surplus, you wouldn't be feeling hungry. At least you would be feeling comfortably full, right? That's what you would be. If you were truly in a surplus, you probably actually be feeling a bit overfull, because our body wants to be at maintenance, right? That's why most people tend to maintain their weight. Like, even overweight people tend to maintain their weight pretty darn good. Now, they are making probably some poor eating and exercise choices that cause them to slowly gain over time, but it's not rapid gains. Like, you look at someone who's overweight, at most, they probably gain about 1 pound per month, and then it compounds, month by month, year by year, and then over the course of, 5 or 10 years, they got an extra 50 plus pounds on, right? That's the way it works. It's slow, gradual gains. It's not like somebody all of a sudden just balloons up overweight overnight and says, like, how the heck did I get 50 pounds overweight? Like, last week I wasn't 50 pounds overweight. How come I'm 50 pounds overweight this week? Like, it doesn't happen that fast. It's ever so slight, and it's almost so slight that you don't even notice it unless you're accurately tracking it. So we want to be in this maintenance. Your body is naturally going to put you into a maintenance. Your appetite is going to regulate it. Now, of course, when you're eating natural unprocessed foods and exercising regularly and all that, then it's going to have more favorable body composition, but you should still, just naturally gravitate towards maintenance calories without even trying. So bottom line, if you're hungry, I don't think you're in a surplus. That's my 2 cents worth there. And I would recommend eating until you're comfortably full, especially if your goal is to gain weight. Like, don't leave the table hungry if your goal is to gain weight. Like, that doesn't make sense, right? You want to have adequate calories in your body so that you can fuel your training, build that lean muscle. So just eat until you're comfortably full. And then monitor your results. Like, track, the food intake you're consuming, track your results, see how it's working. If you are making slow, steady gains, and when I say slow, steady gains, if you're gaining a couple pounds a month, like, that's good progress. That's a good lean bulk progress. Because if you're gaining more than that, chances are some of that extra weight is going to be body fat. Now, again, it depends on you and your goals. Like, are you just trying to pile on weight for the sake of weight? Like, some people are. Some people just want to pile on weight, and they don't care if it's fat or lean or what. They just want to pile on the mass. And if that's the case, then okay, you can probably do a more aggressive weight gain. But if you're trying to do a true lean bulk, then a couple pounds a month is plenty. And think of it over the long term. Like, a couple pounds a month, that's 20 pounds over the course of a year. Like, that's huge gains. That's massive gains. Like, even if you gained 1 pound per month, I mean, that's still 10 to 12 pounds over the course of the year, right? That's solid gains. You have to think of, just slow, steady progress, but let that slow, steady progress compound over time. All right, moving on. Dario's joining in. Thoughts on heavy weights versus time under tension? I kind of covered that a little bit in the initial breaking down of the weights, the different exercises, what I feel would work better. But heavy weights versus time under tension, as a general rule of thumb, it depends on what you're training for. From a bodybuilding point of view, time under tension should take priority over just sheer heavy weight. From a strength, power, and performance point of view, then heavy weight should probably take more priority over time under tension. But you can still utilize both. Like, you can still do heavy weight training in a bodybuilding program, and you can still do some time under tension in a power training program. But generally, you want to prioritize what it is that you're trying to focus on. So a power lifter, for example, is going to prioritize heavy weights. And that's the whole purpose. I mean, is to increase the weight that they're lifting. Whereas a bodybuilder, even though they're lifting weights just like a power lifter is, they're using the weights in a different fashion. For a bodybuilder, the weights are a tool to build the muscles. In a power lifter, the muscles are a means to lift the weights. So it's kind of like a different mindset, even though both are in the gym lifting weights and working out. it's a different mindset and a different approach required for both. So it really depends on what it is that you're trying to achieve. In my situation, I tend to focus more on the quality, the time under tension, but from time to time, I will still push myself with heavy training. But I'm not as aggressive with the heavy training anymore because I've had my share of injuries over the years and I'm more cautious. So that's why I like to err on the side of more quality, time under tension versus simply just trying to move heavyweight for the sake of heavyweight. Okay, and she's got another question. Oh shit, I lost my spot there. My touchpad is very touchy. I jumped through a bunch of questions there. Apparently, if you have a massive cheat day, your body doesn't absorb all the calories. Is this true? That's how so many YouTubers stay thin and do these massive eating challenges. No. If you eat it, it's going to get absorbed. Like, it doesn't evaporate. It's not like, oh, your body's only going to digest up to 3,000 calories, and then anything above that, it's just going to evaporate into thin air and just like it doesn't exist. No. Your body is going to absorb it. Now, whether it actually absorbs it and utilizes it for lean muscle growth versus just storing it as excess body fat, that's another question. But you're going to absorb it, right? You can't just eat endless amounts of food and think that it's just going to somehow magically evaporate into thin air and that it doesn't count. No. As far as these YouTubers and these eating challenges, I mean, sure, there are some unicorns out there who have massive appetites and can tuck away insane amounts of food and still stay lean, but most people can't. And you're watching a video. Like, this isn't always real life. Like, most people, they stage this and they may not actually eat all the food that they say they're eating in the video. Like, people lie on video. People, they put shit out there just to get more, what's the line people say, more spews for more views or something. Like, people put shit out there to get clickbait and all this kind of stuff. It's not always accurate. So take what you see on the internet and take what you see in videos with a grain of salt, right? Just because somebody says, hey, I'm doing a 10,000 calorie cheat, blah, 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 and then they pretend that they do that every day or something. Like, no, nobody is eating that much like that on a regular basis, day in, day out. So anyway, to get back to your question, your body's going to absorb the calories. It's not like it's the calories that magically disappear once you get over a certain amount. No, that doesn't make sense. That's like saying, hey, I can endlessly spend money, but after $1,000, all the money I spend, it's not going to show up on my credit card statement. It's just going to magically disappear, right? I only have to pay the first $1,000, and then the rest is just going to, right? The debt is going to, like a fart in the wind, gone, right? No, it still gets racked up, right? You're responsible for it. What else we got there? Venom 007 question: dealing with a lower back disc herniation. When I squat, I have to be careful. Yeah, I bet you certainly do. Just bought a lower back machine to help. I recently watched your Good Mornings video from 9 years back, I think. Any advice on dealing with back injuries? Okay. First off, if anything hurts when it comes to any exercise, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a back-specific exercise, any exercise at all, if something hurts, don't do it. Listen to your body. Your body is very smart when it comes to giving you pain signals, and pain is your body's check engine light flashing. So whenever you feel pain, discomfort, something doesn't feel right, don't do it. Listen to it. Don't try and tough it out and work through the pain. That's the most stupidest thing, especially when you're working around an injury. And quite honestly, if I had a herniated lower back, herniated disc in my lower back, I probably wouldn't be loading it up with barbell squats. I would look for exercises where I can work my legs without loading my back. So things like lunges, things like leg extensions or leg curls. You can experiment with the leg press machine. Like, try different squat variations. If you have access to like a hip belt squat, you could probably do those. I made a video showing how to do hip belt squats a while back as well. I would look for exercises to not load the spine. And if I was going to load the spine, I would be very darn conservative and kind of like go through the motions with it. So it really depends on where you are in your injury and where you are in your recovery phase and how bad this is. Like if this is something that happened like 10 plus years ago and you're kind of recovered from it, but it's still like that nagging injury that you just got to be careful of re-injuring. You can be a bit more, push yourself a little more, I should say, but you still got to be careful, obviously. But if this is a new injury, like you just recently herniated a disc in your lower back, like don't go loading it up with a barbell squat. Like try and work around it to the best you can. As far as the lower back machine, I kind of got an idea of what it is that you have. I mean, now there are so many different variations of lower back machines, from like hyperextension type machines, glute ham raise machines, to weight stack loaded back extension machines. Like I'm not sure exactly what kind of lower back machine you have, but go through the motions. Like start off super light, go through the motions with it. And again, listen to your body and work within your pain threshold. If anything causes pain, discomfort, or whatever, don't do it. And be very cautious about adding weight to any back exercise, especially if you have a herniated disc. As far as good mornings, that's not really a herniated disc exercise. I would stick to just something as simple as a hyperextension, back extension, with body weight, something along those lines. And I think the best one from a comfort point of view, if you have the hyperextension bench that's at the 45-degree angle, and because that kind of has, it's a more comfortable position versus the ones that are horizontal. All right, so if you have those, and most gyms these days, that tends to actually be like the more common back extension, hyperextension variation is the 45-degree angle one. Those tend to be the most comfortable, and that's probably what I would utilize if I were in that situation, and just do that frequently with body weight and just literally focus on the consistency over the intensity, and just going through the motions and strengthening and stretching those muscles and all the tendons and ligaments and all the discs are at the back. Like focus on the consistency and working that area and let it build up slowly over time. But you got to be careful with this, because when you have a pre-existing injury, it's in that phase where you're rehabbing and working around it. If you try and do too much too soon, then you can take that, what is maybe just a minor injury, and turn it into a major injury. All right, so you got to be very careful in this phase. All right, we have Allie joining in from Jordan. Welcome. We have Al from California. Allie's saying, I do shoulders and triceps. Shall I do shoulders alone? It's personal preference. I mean, if you have the time and the energy to pair up shoulders and triceps together in the same workout, that's fine. In fact, a lot of people will even do a full push workout where they do chest, shoulders, and triceps together in a single session. Now, with that being excuse me. God bless. With that being said, if shoulders are a weak area for you and you want to prioritize them, you could do a shoulder workout in just by itself in isolation. But there's nothing wrong with pairing up multiple muscle groups together. I actually prefer to do even more than that. I very often do total body workouts where I'm literally doing multiple exercises for multiple muscle groups, and that's the way I like to train. I instead of having a dedicated like shoulder day, chest day, back day, arm day, leg day, I like to go in there and like maybe choose one exercise for each major muscle group and hit the total body, and then go in there the next day and choose a different exercise for each major muscle group and hit the total body, and then the next day and choose a different exercise for each major muscle group and again hit the total body. That's more often than not how I actually structure my workouts now. I really enjoy that, and I find that it doesn't leave me feeling painfully sore in any one area. I don't get all that repetitive movement strain that you very often get after like blasting one body part in isolation. Now, I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. It's just my personal preference. It's what I've been doing for the last several years, and I find that it works well for me. But if you prefer the body part split and doing it in more isolation, and that works well for you, then hey, by all means, you can do that as well. It's when it comes to this stuff, it's not right or wrong. It's you have to look at like what is it you want to do and what is it you're trying to achieve, and you can customize it to you and your situation. YT has got a question. Have you ever heard of the Brig 20 by Biomechanics Ph.D. Doug Brignole? He says the traditional compound for suboptimal muscle building compared to his Brig 20 exercises. Future vid would be interesting. Nope, not familiar with Mr. Brig 20 exercises. I'd have to look it up myself. I'm not familiar with him and what he's doing. So we'll move on that one. Thomas the Fitz. Why do I get cramps when I stand up after the ab crunch machine? Common situation. Very often, the root cause of muscle cramps. Now, there could be other causes, but just kind of throwing this out there, what I think would probably be the main cause is lack of sodium. And a lot of times when people are trying to eat healthy, they purposely cut out salt from their diet because they've been brainwashed into thinking salt is the bad guy. Don't consume salt. Salt's going to kill you. No salt, no salt, no salt, right? And if you're drinking lots of water and you're not consuming enough salt, what happens is you actually dilute the electrolytes in your body, and it actually causes muscle cramps very often, especially in the abdominals. It's very common to get them in the abs where you're doing your crunches and sit-ups and whatever, your crunch machines, and then it's just like your abs just lock up, right? And they just get that spasm. They just knot up, and it takes a lot of effort just to kind of to straighten back up once that happens. But if you have adequate sodium in your diet and other electrolytes, adequate sodium, adequate potassium, adequate magnesium, like you have adequate of all these essential nutrients that you need in your diet, very often you will minimize the risk of muscle cramps. And the way it is with me, I actually take salt packets. Like just when you go into any fast food restaurant, those little packets of salt that they have, I'll go in and grab a handful of those salt packets, and I put them in a little Ziploc bag and keep them in my gym bag. And anytime that I feel a muscle cramp coming on, I just tear open one of those salt packets, chase it down with a mouthful of water, and it usually takes care of the muscle cramps within minutes. Like it works very fast because it's very fast absorbing into your body. And generally, that's the root cause, is just an electrolyte imbalance. That's why, like a lot of the sports drinks out there, they have sodium and they have potassium and things in there, to help replenish the electrolytes. Unfortunately, they're also loaded with a lot of sugar in most cases as well, which may or may not be good depending on the situation. I mean, if you're doing some extreme, like long distance endurance event where you're burning massive amounts of calories, yeah, having the simple sugars can certainly help. But if you're in there like doing an hour workout in the gym and you're trying to burn body fat, then those simple sugars can actually hinder that. But the electrolyte portion of it, the sodium and the potassium and all that, that's a powerful piece. I mean, you can do that yourself without relying on sports drinks and excess sugar. You just salt, potassium, magnesium, those simple ones right there. I mean, you can supplement with those. And of course, the salt is the easiest one of all, right? It's cheap or free. Like you can literally go into a fast food restaurant or anywhere that has those little salt packets and just grab them and go. So, I mean, that's a simple little hack that you can use to minimize those cramps. And very often I will actually, if I know I'm going to be doing a hard workout and I know I'm going to be sweating, especially in the summertime when it's warmer and I tend to sweat more, I'll even probably have a little bit of salt before I go to the gym. So like as part of my pre-workout, I'll just take one of those salt packets, chase it down with water to ensure that I got the sodium already in my system before I even hit the gym. And I find that makes a big difference. Not only does it help to minimize muscle cramps, but you'll have more muscle fullness. You'll be able to get a better pump. You'll have stronger muscle contractions because sodium is responsible for all that. Like if you don't have enough sodium in your body, you're not going to get a pump. You're not going to have vascularity. You're not going to be able to feel strong. You need sodium for those muscular contractions. And it's a big misconception because a lot of doctors and mainstream media have kind of like demonized salt, whereas it's not really too much salt. It's not drinking enough water to utilize the salt. Because the way it is once you consume adequate sodium, even if you're consuming too much sodium, as long as you're drinking enough water and you're actually sweating and utilizing it, your body will use what it needs and then flush out the rest, whether it flushes it out through your sweat, flushes it out through your urine. But like you're not just going to endlessly store salt in your body. Like it will get flushed out. So the big thing is not too much salt. It's not enough water to utilize the salt. That's where a lot of people go wrong. So instead of thinking of cutting out your salt, how about you think of just increasing your water consumption? And in my case, I actually increased the water consumption and increased the sodium consumption so that my body can use what it needs, be fully hydrated and fully stocked up on electrolytes, and then flush out what it doesn't need. And that's the optimal situation, especially for athletes and people who are in the gym working out on a regular basis. So give that a try, Mr. Thomas the Fitz. Who else we got there? Maury Tech. Hi, Lee. Ryan from Scotland here. All right. Well, I'm going to call you Ryan instead of Maury Tech or Maury Eck. Ryan. Ryan from Scotland. Keep up the good work. Awesome videos. What music do you listen to in the gym that really gets you motivated? Death metal for me. All right. I'm as boring can be. I don't listen to music when I'm in the gym working out. If I have my earbuds in, I'm either listening to a podcast or an audiobook. That's what I'm doing when I'm in the gym. I'm very rarely listening to music. If I want to listen to music, I will just listen to whatever music they're playing over the speakers at the gym. And so that's me. I'm just telling it like it is. But if heavy metal works for you and it gets you pumped and that allows you to get in a good workout, then hey, go for it. Do whatever works for you. I like to listen to podcasts and audiobooks and stuff and while I'm exercising, because then it's educational for the mind and it's also good for the body. And so it's kind of like a great opportunity for me to get those in. Sir Van Dam. I think that's how you say it. Sir Van Dam. Sir Van Dam. Hello from Dallas, Texas. Hello. Welcome to the video chat. Glad to have you tuning in. We have John joining in. Building tendon strength ? Building tendon strength. A lot of times that will come about from heavy lifting as a side effect. You know, the heavier you lift, the stronger your tendons and ligaments and connective tissue will be. Also, maintaining good flexibility and mobility throughout your tendons will help a lot with that. Another strategy that you can use, and a lot of powerlifters will use this, is doing heavy partial range of motion lifts, especially in a power rack. So, for example, like power rack lockout bench presses or power rack lockout squats or power rack lockout deadlifts. These are all great exercises to handle lifting heavier weight than you could through a full range of motion, but it kind of conditions your body, your central nervous system, and of course the joints, tendons, and ligaments to handle heavier weight. And this was something that I used to do back when I was competing in powerlifting. I would do heavy partial range of motion lifts. So, I mean, those are some strategies that you can use to build tendon strength. But the big one that I would have to ask is why are you trying to build tendon strength? Like, what's the ultimate goal that you're trying to achieve? Because, like, if you're coming back from an injury, maybe like you had a tendon tear or something along those lines, and obviously the approach you would take to rehab an injured tendon or ligament or something is totally different than the approach you would take from like a powerlifter's point of view who's looking to maximize their peak strength. So it really depends on the individual and the situation. And that's why I'm kind of hesitant to just give cookie cutter advice without knowing more detail. So if you want to elaborate on this, if you're still watching, John, and you want to elaborate on your question about building tendon strength, feel free to do so, and I'll see if I can help you out. We have Bez is we. I think I'm pronouncing your name right. Great channel, man. Question here. I rank myself as a bodybuilder, but I do want to get stronger. But I noticed that gains are less for heavyweight. Any advice? Keep training. Just like you can still get stronger as a bodybuilder. A bigger muscle is a stronger muscle and vice versa. So, I mean, keep training heavy and training in progressive overload fashion, but focus on quality movements and more time under tension if the main goal is the bodybuilder, right? Because one of the biggest differences between a bodybuilding workout and a powerlifting workout is, one, the exercise selection. Like, again, bodybuilders tend to choose more muscle isolation type of moves to work on bringing out specific muscle groups, whereas powerlifters kind of thinking the movement pattern, the presses, the bench press, the squat, the deadlift, and assistant exercises to bring up those exercises. But you can still incorporate what a lot of people refer to as power bodybuilding. I mean, you could still train your heavy compound lifts in a powerlifting fashion and then do your isolation work in a bodybuilding fashion. You could still incorporate that. But I would err on the side of the quality training that bodybuilders would use, like the slower tempo, the time under tension, and things like that, versus the heavy explosive style of powerlifting. Now, it's personal preference, not knocking any, but from personal experience, I know a lot of times when people really push powerlifting, it opens up the door for injuries. And I'm speaking from personal experience with myself, as well as most powerlifters that I've ever known. Like, when I'm looking at all the guys that I know personally who've powerlifted, virtually all of them, if they've been doing it for any length of time, I'm not talking about, the young guys still in their 20s, but if you have a powerlifter who's been doing it for a decade or more, and he's in his 30s, 40s, or beyond, he's got the injuries to show for it, right? The elbows, the knees, the hips, the back, maybe torn pecs, maybe torn biceps, maybe whatever. Like, a lot of times powerlifters, they go through the meat grinder, right? When you're pushing their limits with trying to hit heavier weights. And again, I respect the sport for what it is, but not everybody can handle the stress and the abuse that comes with powerlifting, right? A lot of times people get injured, and I certainly did myself in the day. So that's why I'm more like to focus on quality lifting, consistency over intensity, and lighter weights but more time under tension, and focusing more on the bodybuilder style of training, just from the longevity point of view, versus the heavy power training that very often powerlifters and strongman competitors will do. Again, I'm not trying to knock either one of them here, but just speaking from my personal experiences and my personal preferences. And from the sounds of it, that's what your main focus is as well, because you just said you rank yourself as a bodybuilder. All right, what else we got there? Kane is joining in. Hello, Kane. Do you work with people for short-term loss? I weigh 225 and I want to be 205 in 4 months. Is that doable? Yeah, that is a realistic goal. I mean, it's if you want help with a customized training and nutrition program, yeah, feel free to reach out to me. That's a very realistic goal for sure. And if you want, you can email me at leeh@leehayward.com. I've got my email address in the video description below. Just pop open that, and there's a email address, and there's also a link there where you can fill out a form to apply for a strategy session call. And we can jump on a Zoom call and just have a quick chat and just discuss your situation, your goals, and everything else, and see if we can come up with an action plan that works for you. We have Umar joining in. Says, Lee, a week ago while doing squats, I got an exertion headache. Since then, every time I go to the gym, it comes back during my workout. How can I stop them? I actually have a video about exertion headaches. So when this chat is over, just open up a window and type in to YouTube, Lee Hayward exertion headaches, and it should pop up. And that basically covers the solution for exertion headaches. But this is... It's quite common. I used to get them a lot when I was younger. I don't get them anymore. I don't know if it's that I've just, I don't exert myself as hard anymore, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. But very often, exertion headaches, how you can sometimes overcome them. Let me backtrack on this. I used to get them a lot when I was fairly new to training, like in my beginner intermediate phases. As I've gotten more advanced, I don't get them as much, or rarely ever. In fact, I can't remember the last time I've gotten an exertion headache. I honestly can't. But I used to get them quite a lot when I was younger, like in my teens and 20s. They used to be quite frequent. And I think part of it is, one, breathing. Knowing how to breathe properly and ensure that you're getting adequate blood flow and oxygen into your system when you're doing your exercises. That can have a big thing. Another one that I found really helped was purposely taking longer rest breaks between sets. So if you're prone to exertion headaches, purposely extend your rest periods between sets. And this will allow your body time to rest, allow you to really focus on your breathing in between sets and kind of like reoxygenate your body and cells and everything else and have that little mini recovery in between sets. And I find that helps a lot. It also allows your blood pressure and that to reduce. So, I mean, it's a very powerful tool, is just to literally extend your rest period. So, I mean, if you're normally resting 60 seconds between sets, hey, rest 2 minutes between sets. I mean, it's only a small change, but that could literally make a big difference in exertion headaches. Another one you want to focus on as well is hydration. Are you adequately hydrated before your workouts and during your workouts, and staying hydrated? The electrolytes that we talked about earlier, like making sure the adequate sodium and potassium and magnesium and all those key electrolytes in your system, that can certainly help with minimizing the exertion headaches. Also, another thing to consider is blood sugar. Like, do you have some food in your system beforehand so that you're not running into low blood sugar? Because sometimes when you get low blood sugar, that can cause you to have headaches as well. And another thing, when you're training, lift within your means. Like, you don't need to kill yourself in the gym. You don't need to annihilate the muscle. Simply training to momentary muscular failure is intense enough for anybody to stimulate muscle. You don't need to push it to failure and beyond. And the true definition of failure is the point at which you cannot perform another repetition with good form. It's not the point at which you can't move the weight at all. So do not train to the point where, like in a bench press, where you're stapled to the bench and you can't get the barbell off your chest. Like, that's failure and beyond. Or in the case of a barbell curl, like you're heaving and swinging until the point where that thing doesn't move. Like, that's failure and beyond. Get to the point where you can't complete another repetition with good form, meaning that you can't complete it without swinging or cheating. Not necessarily the point where you can't move it at all. Once you've hit that, the set is over. Like, you've stimulated growth. You only need to stimulate. You don't need to annihilate. And you're probably, if you're getting exertion headaches, literally pushing yourself beyond your means. So just scale back the intensity a little bit, and extend the rest periods, and making sure that you're adequately hydrated and electrolyted and all that. And that should make a big difference when it comes to the exertion headaches. And if it doesn't, and this is something that persists, go to the doctor and get it checked out, right? Because who knows, it could be the sign of some underlying issue. So try these tips that I suggested, right, in your next workout. Like, give it a shot and see if it makes a difference. If it does, great. If the headaches ease up because you're resting longer and you're not pushing yourself as hard and you're well hydrated and blah, 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 great. If it doesn't and you're still getting those exertion headaches, don't put it off. If in doubt, get it checked out. So go to the doctor and just see if there's any underlying issue with that. And ideally, it'd be nice if you could go to a doctor who's familiar with working with athletes and people who exercise, because sometimes if you go to a doctor who's like totally sedentary, and there's a lot of doctors out there, like, they don't know jack shit about exercise, because even though they're healthcare professionals, like, a lot of them are overweight and out of shape themselves. Like, no offense, but my family doctor, like, he's short and fat and he doesn't exercise and he obviously doesn't eat right, or like, okay, he's a medical professional, but looking at him, like, man, you don't look like health, right? He doesn't watch my videos, so I got no problem in saying this, but it's true. Like, so I wouldn't go to him for fitness advice, right? Because he doesn't even work out himself. So what kind of fitness advice can someone who doesn't even work out offer you? So it would be nice if you had a family doctor who was knowledgeable about fitness and nutrition and athletics, and who could kind of guide you with this, because sometimes if you're dealing with a family doctor who's not fitness savvy, if you will, it's not personal experience that they're sharing with you. It's just kind of like textbook knowledge, and it's not the same sometimes. Tim is asking if I'm a Canadian. Yes, I am. I'm from Newfoundland. Billy is from Nova Scotia. Welcome, Billy. What's up? You're still savage even in your 40s. Well, I don't. For those of you who've been around the whole total fitness bodybuilding scene from back in the day, the whole savage beast thing. This was, oh my God, back in, I'm going to say 2009. Myself and Vince Del Monte, we made some videos together. And that was Vince's line. He said, "This guy's a savage. He's a beast. This guy's a savage beast." And he kept, I don't know, it's just like this theme that he kept going over and over with. And of course, it stuck. And I think he was just being like, just being a jackass and having a bit of fun throwing it out there. But of course, that line stuck. So amongst my friends from that era, they still call me the Savage Beast, even though I don't consider myself much of a savage or much of a beast these days. But appreciate the comment and the support. All right, moving on. What else we got? BZWeez. Bez is we. I think that's how you pronounce your name. Okay. Plant-based bodybuilder. Do I really need plant-based protein powder, or can I rely heavily on eggs and veggies diet precisely? All right. I'm going to try and be as helpful as I can. If you are a vegetarian, meaning you still consume eggs and dairy, which I'm assuming you do because you're throwing in that you rely on eggs, you can still make it work, provided you're supplementing your diet with protein powder, providing you're getting adequate eggs and you're getting adequate dairy products in there. You can still make it work. Now, it's not ideal. It would be much easier to get your protein if you were eating a mixed diet, because quite honestly, it's hard to eat a high protein diet if you're eating a mixed diet. Like I'm literally working with guys in my Muscle After 40 coaching program. A couple guys I had calls with today, and these are, big guys, right? Guys who are in the, well over 200 pounds, and they're struggling to get their protein intake, and they're eating meat, and they're taking protein shakes and stuff like that. Now, like, even when you have adequate, like, no food restrictions, it's hard enough as it is to consume a high protein diet. So when you have limitations, meaning, okay, now I'm plant-based and I just eliminated a lot of animal protein from my diet, it's even harder. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's like going into a boxing match with one arm tied behind your back. I'm not saying it's impossible, but you're at a disadvantage, right? I'm just stating it like it is. So you're going to have to really focus on supplementation. You're going to really have to focus on consuming the dairy products and the eggs, and do so consistently. Like simply having 1 or 2 eggs with breakfast and thinking, oh, I got my protein met for the day, that ain't going to cut it, right? You're going to have to bump up the protein intake and do so more consistently throughout the day. And just a heads up, plant-based protein isn't always the same quality as animal-based protein. Like, for example, I'll give you I've seen this recently, like the quality of protein that you get from plant-based, like if you had a plant-based protein powder versus a nice high-quality whey protein powder, you're going to get more quality amino acids and more muscle building benefits from the whey protein than you would from the plant-based protein. You would actually probably have to take twice as much of the plant-based protein to equal the same quality of the amino acids and muscle building benefits that you would get from the whey protein. So you need to really focus on protein intake as a plant-based vegetarian bodybuilder. Right? You need to prioritize it. Again, I'm not saying it can't be done, but it's making the process a lot harder than it already is. All right, moving on. Dan is joining, and he says, Lee, I've fallen out of training due to the pandemic closing of the gyms repeatedly, and I've become hesitant to get started again. Any tips on getting past this mental block? Thanks. You've pretty much nailed it on the head. It's just a mental block. The simple answer is just to suck it up and do it. Like, don't overthink it. Don't make it more complicated. Like, just do it. Like, that's the simple answer. Now, as far as tips, like, don't get hung up on what you used to be able to do, or what you like, oh, hey, before the pandemic, I was bench pressing 225 for sets of 10, and I was squatting 315, and I was this and that and the other. If you haven't worked out in 2 years, you're not lifting the same weights that you used to lift when you were working out consistently. So, like, start off just like a beginner. And the thing that you need to focus on at this stage, make a habit of just showing up. And in fact, for the next week, if you want, like, Lee Hayward's homework assignment to get you started again, just first off, if you don't have a gym membership, sign up for a gym membership and show up 3 times. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or 3 non-consecutive days, whatever work with your schedule, just show up. And I really don't give a shit what you do when you get there. Just walk in the door. Like, make a habit of showing up and walking in the door. Because the hardest exercise you will ever do at the gym, especially for someone like yourself who's hesitant to get started and you've got this mental block and whatever other stuff is going on, the hardest exercise in the gym is opening up the front door and walking in. That's the hardest exercise you'll do. Once you're there, it's like coasting downhill from there. It gets easier once you're already there. The hardest part is to get there. So for the first week, go to the gym, get yourself a membership, and just show up. Walk in the door. I don't care if you just stand on the treadmill and walk for 10 minutes and then turn around and walk back out. Or you just daddle around with a couple of the machines or something. Like, just, I don't give a shit what you do. I really don't. Just walk in the door. Get the habit of, hey, I'm going to show up to the gym 3 times this week. And then each time you show up, do a little bit more than you did before. That's it. All right? Just focus on progress over perfection. Don't get hung up on the details. Like, don't say, well, what's the best set and rep pattern, the best workout split, and the best this and that, and should I use free weights or should I use machines? Should I do high reps or should I do low reps? It doesn't matter. If you're doing nothing now, then something is better than nothing. So just show up and go through the motions. I mean, I've got a whole bunch of sample beginner workouts. I've even put together workout series dedicated for people who are coming back to the gym after COVID pandemic. Right. So if you want, I can literally send you the link. It's there on my main YouTube channel. Right there. There's a get back to the gym workout series. Right. So, I mean, you can go follow that and literally just go through the motions. And what you'll find is each time you go, you're going to feel like it's a little accomplishment. It's a little victory. And each time it's going to get easier and easier. And it's going to get better and better. And you're going to get a little bit stronger and stronger. And over the course of several weeks and over the course of several months, you'll gradually build yourself back up again. But it's not going to be some overnight miracle. Like, if you work out today, you're not going to look any different tomorrow. But it will start to compound over time. And you just got to bite the bullet and do it. Right? Just show up. Right? That's the simple thing. Just show up. Give yourself permission to show up and go through the motions. Right? Don't make it any more complicated than that. Moving on. All right. Thanks, Brian. Brian offered a tip support there through the super chat. Much appreciated. He says, "Sup, Lee? Your vids are always helpful. Thank you." Appreciate it, Brian. Much obliged. Venom 007 says, "I have a 45 bench back hyperextension, I think it's called." Okay, yeah, I think we were talking about the herniated discs way back when. Yep, perfect. Excuse me, it tickled my throat. The 45-degree angle hyperextension bench is the one that I would recommend using. So literally just body weight with that. That would be a great exercise to help rehab the lower back. And that's something, if you have that at home, like, you could literally do that on a daily basis. Like, just like working within your pain threshold. I mean, obviously, if something hurts, don't do it. But ideally, just kind of get into the consistent habit of doing a little bit every day. I would much rather you do like a set of hyperextensions every single day and just let it compound and compound and compound, because it's going to help to strengthen and work that area versus going in there and doing like a big, 100 rep hyperextension workout one day and then feeling painfully sore the next. It's better to do a little tiny bit more frequently, especially when you're working around injuries and mobility issues. Consistency over intensity. We have Glenn joining in. He says, "I had a frozen shoulder last year, struggling to get back to the gym as mobility is super weakened in the joint. Any suggestions on mobility programs to help out?" All right, I've never actually had a frozen shoulder. I mean, I've had some shoulder injuries and aches and pains, but it's all been workout related stuff. I've never had a true frozen shoulder. So, I mean, if you have access to a good physiotherapist who's used to working with such issues, it probably would be a good idea to get checked out by somebody in person so they can take you through some different exercises and mobility moves to see what you can and can't do. That will probably be a worthwhile investment. And it's something that you don't necessarily have to do it ongoing. Like, even if you just went for a few sessions to kind of see, okay, where you're at and get some exercises that you can do, and maybe you'll be able to even continue on with yourself at home. But in the meantime, I do have a whole bunch of different shoulder videos on YouTube. So if you go in and search for like Lee Hayward rotator cuff, Lee Hayward warm-up routine, you should see some of my videos that cover stuff like that. And I always like to do different shoulder mobility exercises as part of my warm-up routine before any workout, because the shoulders are so critical. Like if you get a shoulder injury, it can hinder everything. Like it can hinder your upper body workouts. It can even hinder your lower body workouts, because I mean, you can't put a barbell on your back if your shoulders are hurting. You can't pull deadlifts if your shoulders are hurting. Like it impacts so many things. So shoulder mobility is huge. And I do have several videos covering that. Just do a search for Lee Hayward, either rotator cuff, because I have several videos, specifically showing rotator cuff work, which is, good for shoulder mobility, or even just do search for Lee Hayward warm up. Excuse me, I'm gonna tickle my throat. I need to get a drink of something soon, and I'm all out of drink. Anyway, I'll be cluing up the video chat shortly. We're almost at the hour mark. What's the best way to preserve muscle on a cut aside from lifting? Making sure you're meeting your protein intake. Protein is the building block that's going to build and preserve muscle. So do not cut protein when you're trying to cut calories. Make the calorie cuts primarily from excess fat calories, excess carbohydrate calories, preferably processed food calories if possible, but keep the protein intake high. That's what I would recommend. And a good rule of thumb to shoot for is a gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. So if you're on a fat loss program, and let's just say you want to get down to 175 pounds, well, make darn sure that you're consuming at least 175 grams of protein each day. That will help to preserve lean muscle and keep you in a positive nitrogen balance, help to maximize protein synthesis so that you're not burning up your own lean muscle tissue. Another thing you can do as well is supplement with essential amino acids while you're training, especially if you're doing high intensity training. So high intensity weight training or high intensity cardio, supplementing with essential amino acids while you're training can help to preserve lean muscle as well. So that's another strategy. Okay. There we go. Excuse me. Where else for me to? Let me just see, guys. Best exercise to build size for the outer bicep. That's from Mark. I wouldn't, when it comes to like building up the muscles, don't get too hung up on like, okay, I want to like the outer bicep. You just want to build bigger biceps. Seriously, don't get hung up on thinking like, okay, this exercise is the outer bicep exercise and this bicep is the inner bicep exercise, and like just build bigger biceps. And ideally what I would recommend for maximum bicep growth, and you can utilize this for other muscle groups as well, but I'll keep it geared towards biceps. Positions of flexion is hands down my favorite style of training for really muscle group isolation. And what it basically means is training your major muscle groups through all the different ranges of motion, the mid-range, the fully stretch, and the peak contraction. So a mid-range bicep exercise would be some form of standing curl, like maybe a standing barbell curl, standing easy bar curl, standing dumbbell curl, some form of standing curl. And this is generally what you're going to be able to handle the most weight with. And it's a mid-range exercise, meaning the majority of the tension is in the middle of the range of motion. So when you're standing up and you're starting a bicep curl, like right at the start, when you're curling your arms from the bottom, there's not a lot of tension. Once you get to the mid-range, you're in the middle of the curl, that's when the maximum tension is. And then once you've completed the curl, the tension kind of slacks off a little bit at the top, just due to the leverage. So with a standing curl, the mid-range is where you get most tension in the muscle, hence the mid-range exercise. And it's a big exercise that allows you to handle relatively heavy weight. A fully stretched exercise would be something like a preacher curl, where your biceps are fully stretched out in the bottom and you really get a good stretch in the muscle. Another example could be like an incline bench dumbbell curl, where you're leaning back on the incline bench and you're pre-stretching your biceps out. That would be a great example of a fully stretched bicep exercise. And then a peak contraction would be like a concentration curl, or maybe a cable curl, where you get the peak contraction where you curl it up and you really have to fight to hold the weight at the top of the movement. So in a concentration curl, you really have to fight to hold the weight in the top of the movement. With a cable curl, due to the constant tension you get from cables, you have to fight to hold the weight in the top of the movement. So those would be examples of a peak contraction exercise. And that's the way I would recommend structuring a bicep workout for maximum bicep development. Mid-range, fully stretched, peak contraction. And you do that, you're going to get a killer pump. I'm telling you right now, just that order, and do it in exact that order, right? Mid-range, fully stretched, peak contraction. And your arms will be pumped like nothing else, right? You'll just really feel it. And this, you can apply this for all of the major muscle groups. And if you want to see a sample workout for this, just do a search for Lee Hayward positions of flexion on YouTube, or just go to my YouTube channel and look through the playlists. Like, I have a full positions of flexion playlist, including a complete arm workout that you can follow along with that shows this, take you through the workout in real time. All right. What else we got there? Gabriel's joining. It says, Lee, I'm rocking a push-pull legs and getting really good results for 6 years now, but no matter what I'm doing, my pull muscles just don't grow like others. Any tips? Okay, so pull the back, and your back is a stubborn area. That's quite common. A lot of times the back can be a hard area to focus on for a lot of people because there's a couple of reasons. One, a lot of guys in their early years of training don't prioritize the back and do very little for their back because, let's face it, it's the back. It's out of sight. It's out of mind. You can't see it. It's not a show-off muscle. Most guys, when they start training, they want to focus on building up the muscles that they can see when they look in the mirror. The chest, the abs, the biceps, the shoulders, right? They want like the beach body muscles, what they see when they look at themselves in the mirror. You don't see your back when you look at yourself in the mirror. So a lot of times the back kind of gets neglected. And this leads to overdevelopment of the show-off muscles in proportion to the back muscles. So a lot of times people have to prioritize the back. Another reason why back can be harder to develop is, again, because it's out of sight, out of mind. You can't see it when you're training it. So you can't see the muscles move and contract, and it makes it harder to get that mind-muscle connection because you really have to focus on feeling the muscles because you can't see them. Like when it comes to the chest, I mean, you can look down, you can see your chest, especially if you're doing like a fly or a cable crossover and you're looking at yourself, especially if you're in the mirror, right? You can see it. When you're doing a bicep curl, right? You can look down, you can see your biceps. If you're looking in the mirror, you can see them. And just that visual cue of seeing the muscles that you're working while you're working them helps to give you more of a mind-muscle connection and actually helps to get more in tune with the exercise. And you're able to focus on that muscle and contract it better because you can see it. The back, you can't. So, I mean, you're doing your rows, you're doing your pulls and your whatever, all your lat pull downs, your pull-ups, your deadlifts. You don't see your back. So you really have to develop that sixth sense in a way where you feel the muscles because you can't see them. So it takes more of a practice and more mind-muscle connection to get really good at it. And what I would recommend, and this is something, it'd be nice if we could have a back and forth conversation on this, because I really want to know what it is you're struggling with. Like, are you struggling meaning the muscles don't grow in terms of they're weak, or they don't grow in terms of like, I can't feel the muscles working, I don't get a pump, or what? Like, because saying that, they don't respond like other muscle groups, I really need to know more about what you mean by that. But this is what I would recommend, just based on my interpretation of your question. I would lighten up the weight for your back exercises, and I would really focus on squeezing and contracting and trying to feel the muscles working with each repetition. And what you want to do is, like, even right now, like as you're doing, like, you'd be sitting up in your chair and you could like do a row and like pull your shoulder blades back, squeeze your lats, squeeze your shoulder blades back behind you. And you should be able to feel that. Like, I can feel my back contracting right now. Pretend you're doing a lat pull down, pull down and actually feel your back contract. And this is where like competitive bodybuilders have an edge over, people who are not competitive bodybuilders, because where they're posing and flexing and contracting their muscles without tension, like posing, you have to literally contract the muscles with no weight whatsoever, just focusing on, the static contraction and the movement. That gives you more mind-muscle connection. So get familiar with those movements, like, be able to row and feel your back squeeze and contract, be able to do a pull down, feel the muscle squeeze and contract, like go through all the different movement patterns and get that mind muscle connection and learn how to contract your back, and then apply weights to it, but still maintain that same contraction, right? You still want to be able to do it, and then gradually build up the weights while keeping that contraction. And if you can do that, then your back will respond much better, much more favorably. And generally speaking, as the muscle gets bigger and more developed, it will improve your mind-muscle connection. Because very often when somebody's new to working out and they have very little muscle development, it's hard to feel anything working. Like if you don't got much of a chest, you're not going to get much of a pump when you do chest presses or flies or anything like that. Whereas once you start to actually put some meat there, right, you have some muscle on your frame, then the more muscle you have, the more pump you're going to get, and the more it's going to be able to feel that contraction. So it's kind of like a catch-22. Like the less muscle you have, the less you're going to feel it. The more muscle you have, the more you're going to feel it. But you have to kind of like purposely start the process and really try and consciously develop that mind-muscle connection and then apply the weights to it while still maintaining that muscle connection. Simply going through the motions, like just heaving and rowing the weights, like you see a lot of guys, they're heaving and rowing, but there's no lat activation going on. There's no isolation or contraction. They're simply just almost like someone pulling over a lawnmower. Like, yes, they're pulling it and then they're going through the motions, but there's no isolation happening, right? Like they're not isolating their lats or anything like that when they pull over lawnmowers. It's like, bah, bah, right? They use whatever muscles they can and momentum and just heave and jerk and whatever it takes to get the lawnmower pulled over, right? It's just, that's the way a lot of people are in the gym, just throwing around the weights with no mind-muscle connection to it. Slow down the tempo and really focusing on feeling that muscle is working, and that should help to stimulate some new muscle growth. And that alone, like just going through that, even with lighter weights, you'll probably feel a new level of muscle soreness and actually a new level of muscle stimulation, and that could help to take things to another level. Another thing that I would recommend, and I'm going to share this one as my last tip before we clue it up, double up the frequency, all right, or at least increase the frequency. So anytime you have a stubborn body part, one of the best ways to help develop that stubborn body part is to train it more often. So take all your stronger muscle groups and put them on like a maintenance program, and then your stubborn body parts, the weaker ones, prioritize them. So for example, like if you're doing push-pull legs, what I would do is hit the pushing muscles once a week, legs once a week, and I would do the pulling workout twice a week. That's what I would do. I would prioritize it so it gets twice the frequency and twice the volume of all the other muscle groups. And that prioritization of the pulling muscles will help to speed up growth in that area while you're still maintaining in the other muscle groups. So put the stronger muscles on kind of like a maintenance, lower priority program, and then prioritize the pulling muscles, and that will help to balance things out over time. All right, folks, I'm going to get ready and clue it up. I know there's still a few other questions there, but I'm already over the hour, and I got to tell you, I'm parched, and I need to get myself a drink. Drink of water, that is. I'm not drinking alcohol. Right? I just want to get a drink of a nice ice cold water. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the video chat. I certainly did. It's nice to do these. And if you have any questions about what was covered today, or you want to elaborate on anything that was discussed, feel free to reach out to me. Again, I have my contact information down in the video description below, so just pop that open and you can reach out to me. And if you would like some help with a customized fitness and nutrition program for you, reach out to me. All right. I actually have a link down there below where you can schedule in for a strategy session call where we can have a one-on-one conversation and see if we can brainstorm an action plan and a strategy for you. So if that's something you're interested, reach out. Reach out. I don't know. Reach out to me and let me know, and we can have a chat. All right, guys, have yourself a great one. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Enjoy your weekend, and I will talk to you later. Over and out.